Hi here, Nick from Key Issues, and I just wanted to let you guys know that for the last 27 years, I've been keeping a very meticulous list of people who have been making fun of Scott Summers, aka Cyclops. And now that X-Men 97 is out and it's a certified hit and all the brand new Cyclops stands are out there on the scene, just be aware that I have receipts. All of you who didn't like Cyclops before, please feel free to drop a comment below letting me know why you didn't like him and a firm apology, and I'll let it slide. The last few months have been an animation fan's renaissance. X-Men 97 seems to be the perfect force of nature that Marvel needed right now to win back a little bit of trust in comic book fandom, and Invincible's proved itself to be a massive juggernaut of a franchise already. I don't know about you, but I feel like these properties were exactly what the stagnant comic book media industry needed exactly when they needed it. Right now is a perfect time for animation to thrive. We're essentially in an MCU drought, and the DCU isn't launching until 2025. Deadpool and Wolverine is really the only major comic film coming out this year, and I think just about everybody I know is totally fine with that. X-Men 97 was never going to be anything less than an absolute smash hit. It's the perfect combination of nostalgia mixed with perfect timing. People sorely underestimate how popular the X-Men truly are. X-Men 97 fills the void that so many of us are feeling, knowing that we're potentially another few years away from the MCU bringing the X-Men into whatever the hell remains after the next few Avengers movies are over. Now, when it comes to Invincible, well, Invincible is exploding in popularity, much for the same reason that anime and manga has. Invincible has a very low barrier to entry. Just start at issue 1 or episode 1 and there you are. You don't need to know 4 seasons of an animated show or 8 movies or 75 years of comic history. These shows are exactly what we need right now. The animation is sharp, the action is awesome, and the music is iconic. But more importantly than those things, these shows seem to be made by people who truly understand and want to present the material as authentically as they possibly can. Comic book accuracy and authenticity matters because comic book characters were already beloved before they became animated shows or live-action movies. Comic characters have a history of deep, rich storytelling, and it's my personal belief that despite the fact that Hollywood is perfectly fine cashing in off the brand recognition of comic characters, the medium of comics, as well as comic authors and artists, are still not respected within the entertainment industry. Oftentimes, it feels as if these characters and stories are abandoned in all but name, so that Hollywood could rewrite, or maybe a more accurate term is overwrite, these stories. Let me start by discussing the best-selling comic team of all time, the X-Men. The X-Men are a beloved team, and what's most interesting about them to me is that everybody has their own favorite character. Everybody identifies with one or more members. They have countless iconic stories, from the Phoenix Saga to House of X, Powers of X, Messiah Complex, and many, many others. X-Men 97 picks up directly after the final episode of the original X-Men series ends, and all you really need to know is that Xavier's gone, Magneto takes over the X-Men, and despite what the media illiterate folk on Twitter think, the entire concept of the show is a massive allegory to civil and social problems that have been plaguing our society since we first figured out how to divide ourselves. You know, just like kid topics. But the point I'm trying to make is that no matter who you are, X-Men has something for you. Something or someone you can identify with. Unless it's this guy. If it's this guy, get help. I'd say that Cyclops and Wolverine are my two favorites because I'm both a rule-following dork with glasses and an absolutely unhinged short, thick boy. It was a blast to see both of them getting their time to shine in the show, specifically Cyclops, who was relegated to adult hall monitor and guy who yelled "Gene" a lot growing up. He was like the quarterback. He has the hot girlfriend, leads the team, and I'm allowed to say that because I'm the president of the Scott Summers fan club. And while Wolverine is awesome and I love the character, I'll tell you that I can't ever seem to recall Cyclops doing anything as cool in the films or previous episodes of the series as he's done here. Growing up, I was never a huge fan of the X-Men film franchise, and I think it's primarily due to the fact that the X-Men animated series was just miles beyond the X-Men films in the way they represented the characters. X-Men the Animated Series tried to present the stories from the comics as faithfully and accurately as they could get away with, considering the constraints of running time, budget, and the demographic of their core audience, which was kids. Some liberties were taken, but for the most part, the episodes feel like they kept the heart of the characters, stories, and the emotional beats intact. I also guess it kind of helps to remind people that if you're under the age of 30, you really haven't lived in a world today where you didn't have nearly unlimited access to any media that you could possibly want. And don't take that the wrong way, this isn't shade, but basically from the time I was in late high school to today, I was able to find just about any song, comic, movie, or television show episode I wanted for free online. However, growing up as a kid, most of those avenues weren't around. I mean, think about it. If you wanted to ethically read X-Men today, all you have to do is sign up for Marvel Unlimited, search for X-Men, and start reading on any smartphone, tablet, or computer. Thanks, Marvel. I actually didn't even have access to a home computer until I was almost done high school, and I didn't have access to high-speed internet until college. And despite the fact that no one talks about it, comics are expensive. I wasn't able to afford comic books as a kid. I got them occasionally, but the cost is prohibitive for children. The point I'm making here is that X-Men the Animated Series was basically my introduction to the lore of X-Men, and I think that the original Fox series did a tremendous job staying true to that lore. And now I'm older, I can go back and I can read those stories that inspired those episodes, and for the most part they hold up. X-Men 97 continues that trend by faithfully adapting material for audiences who desperately crave authentic versions of those properties that Hollywood really hasn't given to us since then. I mean, sure, they made a ton of movies, but those are really more of an inspired by version of those characters, rewritten by Hollywood writers to try to fit into a blockbuster mold for the silver screen. I mean, let's be honest, Hollywood basically wrote Cyclops out of the X-Men franchise altogether in favor of Wolverine, and Cyclops is the literal leader. Now, let's switch gears for a moment to discuss the new belle of the ball, Invincible. Invincible was a comic series that I knew was primed to explode from the moment the animated series was announced. The best decision that Amazon, Robert Kirkman, and Seth Rogen made was having this be a big-budget adult animated show. There is a lot to be said about translating comics to live action, but I think that retelling or adapting comics just works better for some properties in animation than others, and Invincible is one of those series. I started building massive databases to make character breakdowns from the minute the first season was announced, because I knew that if people saw in Invincible what I saw when I was reading it, it was going to take over the internet when it came out. And it has. Invincible is the breath of fresh air that the comic book space needed. It wasn't bound by nearly 100 years of convoluted backstory, retcons, and rewrites that other properties have. It was, much like a manga, a self-contained story that had a clear beginning and end. It is a much more approachable story, and fans were able to easily jump in without a lot of the convoluted gatekeeping that surrounds other comic fandoms. And you know what? Kudos to Skybound and Amazon teams for what they're doing here. They're expertly adapting storylines with minimal changes and are creating some of the most powerful animated comic-based TV ever produced. It's a true testament to, you guessed it, the original work that Robert Kirkman, Ryan Ottley, and Cory Walker made. The comic itself ran for over 140 issues. Comics don't just run 100 plus issues if people aren't buying them and there isn't critical praise. There are a lot of people who don't like straight up adaptations, but when you become heavily invested emotionally in a specific story and its characters, you want to know that the stories are being faithfully retold and the characters remain true to what you read. There are now millions of Invincible fans around the globe, dedicated legions of fans digging into the rich lore and finding new things they love every day. To return back to X-Men 97, much like the 90s animated series, they've taken the story that people were already familiar with, in this case the trial of Magneto, Executioner's Song, and Life Death, and has adapted them into bite-sized episodes that keep the emotional beats. And virtually every episode of Invincible is a panel-by-panel recreation set to fantastic music and with an all-star cast doing superb voiceover work. The reason I made this video is that X-Men 97 and Invincible are extremely important to me, and I speculate that they will become extremely important to future generations very quickly. I credit shows like X-Men the Animated Series, Spider-Man, Batman the Animated Series, and Superman the Animated Series as being the catalysts for a lifelong obsession with comics and comic characters. I have collected comics for most of my life, and I read anything I can get my hands on. I was at a comic convention just this week, and you'd be surprised how many people there were looking for X-Men issue 200 and the full Executioner's Song run. which were both dollar books 2 months ago. Also, have you tried to buy Invincible back issues recently? You can't. They're impossible to find. But the omnibuses and compendiums are selling out. Seeing something done well and on the small screen or large screen sparks people to go out and check out the source material. Believe it or not, there was a time when comic book films were semi-rare, and there always felt like there was a disconnect between what I remembered from the animated series or comic book panels to the silver screen. And this is not something that's period specific either. When I was younger, we suffered from inauthentic films like Daredevil, X-Men The Last Stand, and Elektra. Movies that didn't understand the source material well enough to hook audiences. But that problem isn't unique to the 90s and early 2000s. And we're seeing it happen today, and audiences are checking out. Films and shows like Black Widow, who butchered Taskmaster, Secret Invasion that was only Secret Invasion in name, and countless Snyderverse projects that fans didn't show up for prove that audiences are just leaving inauthentic feeling projects behind. Proper portrayal and accuracy matters because these are stories that already worked. We've already seen them succeed in the form of comic sales, and fans are already bought in. These comic writers have already proven that their stories connect with readers, and readers, at least on a fundamental level, are primarily responsible for hyping up movies and shows because they're the ones in the know. These authors and artists, their characters and writing deserve praise, and I'd really love to see Hollywood do a better job of showing these authors and artists the respect they deserve by not trying to outright or rewrite their stories, except, making them worse. There are countless massive film franchises based off books, like Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings, and Twilight, and they basically all adapted the source material with some minor changes and cleaned up at the box office. But for comics, it's totally fine to disassemble characters, teams, storylines, relationships, and anything else some Hollywood bozo didn't like. Imagine if Marvel made a Secret Wars film that somehow followed the plot of Hickman's Secret Wars, and in addition to making literal assloads of money at the box office, they also sold hundreds of thousands of trade paperbacks of the same stories. It's win-win. When James Gunn came out and showed the exact stories that were influencing the upcoming slate of DCU projects, those books sold out instantly. Marvel and others rarely do that, but they will call an Avengers film Age of Ultron with a straight face, knowing damn well that that movie had nothing to do with the story. Look, Invincible rocks. X-Men 97 rocks. These shows are going to continue to get awesome reviews and bring in new fans and inspire creative people everywhere. They treat the source material with respect and appear to be made by people who respect what they're adapting. They prove, inarguably, that authenticity and comic book accuracy matter. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope you agree, and if not, let me know what I got wrong down in the comments section. This has been Nick with Key Issues. Thanks for watching, and remember the motto, Invincible and X-Men over everything.